Okay, we are on the final page, and this one should look familiar to you because it was on the previous practice test. And we have a graph where your cousin is offering to buy you a phone as long as you pay them back in interest. You're going to start at $1 in an initial interest, and then the interest will double each week after that. So looking at this graph, the first question asks, does this graph have a minimum value? So a minimum y value would be a lowest point. If we look at this graph and we are seeing how far down does it go, I can see that it does have a lowest point because this point here is where it stops going any lower. It doesn't ever go below that point. So yes, it does have a minimum value. What that point is we can see that it is at 0 along the x-axis. That would be 0 weeks. So right when you buy the phone, 0 weeks into your cousin's offer, right, 0 weeks after you buy the phone, it looks like it might be at $0 interest, but using the context of the problem, you start at $1 interest. So while it does kind of look like it might go down to 0, it actually begins at 1. It begins at $1 of interest. So that would be the minimum point, the lowest the graph gets. It goes down to the point 0 weeks, $1 of interest. But then it asks, does the function have a maximum y value? So a maximum y value would be a highest point. So if I'm following this graph up, and I want to see if it has a highest point, well, I get to this arrow that tells me that it would actually continue past this graph and keep on going forever. So this does not have a maximum point because this graph would keep on going up forever. It doesn't have a highest point. So since there's not a highest point, I don't need to list one because there is not one. The one thing that gave us a little bit more trouble was with identifying the domain and range. On this graph, we should see that if we're looking at the domain and range, which is how far left and right we go, domain and range is how far left and right we can go on a graph. The domain starts at 0 weeks, but then it keeps on going forever. We could keep on going to more and more and more weeks as we go on. So you only see it go to about 6.5 weeks, but it could keep going to more and more weeks. But everything is greater than or equal to 0, because 0 is our starting point. So x, or our weeks, they're all greater than or equal to 0. 0 is our starting point. The furthest to the left this graph gets is 0. The furthest down this graph gets, that would be our minimum point. The lowest we get, the smallest interest that we get is $1. And so all of our interest, or all of our y values, they're all going to be $1 or bigger. It's $1, and then it'd be $2, and then $4, then $8. It keep on doubling until it gets to infinitely large numbers. But the smallest it ever gets is $1. So that is our starting point for the range, which is our up and down values. So our weeks, they start at 0. Our dollars of interest, they start at $1. So the weeks start at 0 weeks, the dollars of interest starts at $1. And that is our domain and range, is that our weeks are all 0 weeks or bigger. Our interest is all $1 interest or bigger. And that is all for this one.